All-Star Roundtable this week. We have Kirsten Alvanatakis, the communications director for the Democratic Party here in Ohio, and Doug Price back with us, the chair of the Franklin County Republican Party Executive Committee. That's a long title you've got.
Too long.
And we welcome both of you. We are just days away from an election that could be a bellwether for the state. We don't know yet. What trends should we be looking for on Tuesday, and what are you going to be looking for on Tuesday?
Well, here in a urban setting, a base Democrat county anymore, Franklin County, we the Republicans are a little nervous, but working really hard. Awfully proud of our slate of endorsed candidates to succeed in some open spots in the legislature. But I have to say, public knowledge, that there's an uptick in absentee voting on the Democratic side. We usually run a little bit parallel, so there is that enthusiasm there. We'll be working to close that enthusiasm gap, if you want to call it that, in the coming months.
And we have heard that a lot of the absentee ballots that are coming in are much more heavily Democratic this time around. Is your party fired up?
Absolutely. And of course, let's preface this with the thought that early voting has been looking good for us so far, but it's not something that couldn't be caught up in the last few days of early voting on election day. But we're seeing in our side's gubernatorial primary, we're seeing an issues-based campaign. People are focused on talking about kitchen table issues that affect Ohio families. And what we're seeing on the other side of the aisle, unfortunately, is a really negative, divisive, personal attack-style primary. And I think that may be depressing some turnout on their side of the aisle. They're not focused on Ohio's future.
Well, we must say that on the statewide level in particular, not so much here in Franklin County races, but we are seeing, let's take the governor's race as an example. Mike DeWine and Mary Taylor are both very negative. And it's surprising to hear the two of them accusing each other of being liberal.
Well,
what should we take from all of that?
This is sort of what we call silly season, and it happens on both sides of the aisle. We could find reams of the Democratic candidates punching each other in the nose at the gubernatorial and other levels as well, particularly heightened right now because both Mike DeWine and Mary Taylor have been high-profile Republicans on the state scene. Mike DeWine and John Husted have been running a substance issue-based campaign all across the state about their accomplishments and their vision for Ohio. Mary took some shots, and they weren't going to sit and take it. So they're tough, scrappy fighters, too. We're proud of that. They'll take that strength on the issues, but also the strength of campaigning into the general election.
And I know you said the Republicans are being so negative. The Democrats don't have to be real negative at this point, but you certainly aren't going to pledge that you're not going to be negative in the fall, are you?
Go ahead, Go ahead.
Because we all know what's about to hit this state in the coming months.
Well, I will say this. We will offer a contrast message for voters, and we will show the things that we're fighting for: affordable health care, better education for our kids, investing in higher education. We have the nation's biggest student loan debt in the country. And also the other side of the aisle, we're seeing a lot of corruption in the State House. We've seen the resignation of Cliff Rosenberger, who was the top House Republican. We're seeing this growing ECOT scandal, what we've been calling Chartergate, and we really think that that could be Coingate on steroids this year. So, yeah, for right now, we're talking about issues, but we will definitely be offering a contrast message for voters this year.
And contrast messaging is a nice way, we all know, as negative messaging. And the reality is, I think this election season, probably leading up to November, will be the most negative we will have ever seen in this state. And what do you agree with that? And how much do you think it is the Trump factor?
Well, I think that's a big part of it. I can't let this go without 10 seconds on, I didn't bring my list, but I could have, of the Democratic lawmakers at the State House who have been pushed out or prosecuted. Some gone to jail in recent years, but we won't go there. But if you want to, if you want,
there.
but so did you. So, but if we want to tally it up, we can do the tally. I'd be happy to do that. But
there is a list of Democrats too.
There's an open gubernatorial seat.
Yeah.
And a first off election for the presidential, always going to be heavily contested. Around central Ohio, in Franklin County, the president only got about 32% of the vote, but he carried Ohio, and not by a small margin. So it's going to be a very interesting, complicated fight all across the Buckeye State, and I'm sure it will be spirited and contrast-based, too.
I want to get back to what you said about Trump, though, because What we've seen in this primary is both candidates run to the right, embrace Trump, and they're actually rejecting our current Republican governor, John Kasich, which I think this state is a moderate state.
It's interesting to see that, isn't it?
It's certainly interesting to see, and I think, you know, it's probably concerning for some of the Kasich folks out there.
Well, I mean, we're awfully proud across the board of this Governor Kasich's accomplishments. He's, latest polls I saw, in the 60s across the board of popularity in Ohio, and that has to do with the fact that because independents and Democrats also recognize that he isn't all about partisanship and one party and my way or the highway. He has always been a strong personality, opinionated, sure, a great leader, but a consensus builder too. That's why he's gotten so much done at the State House.
And he's going around, he's been around the country. Obviously, the national media pays a lot of attention to John Kasich. And I happened to be at a luncheon this week when they were talking about political trends. And the reality is, you know, Donald Trump has a high approval rating right now with Republicans, but his disapproval with Democrats is like 5%. Some people are saying John Kasich could have been the more centrist candidate next time around. Is that something we might even see?
Well, the governor's keeping all of his options open. He is responding to invitations not only from across the country but across the world. He's actually recognized as kind of a national leader in foreign policy these days as well. So he's, what I've heard him say publicly and privately, is keeping his options open. He's not decided to do anything. He's finishing this tenure strong. He just was in Pike County on the opiate issue and community issues yesterday, and he's still traveling the state with his sleeves rolled up, working hard to finish strong.
Well, you know, I also want to ask you before I let you go, District 12 in the congressional race, first time we've had that district open. Pat Tiberi was considered to be a shoo-in for re-election. Now it's a Republican seat that came open, and people are saying it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a scrap in November, whoever leads the ticket. Give me your predictions for what you think is going to happen Tuesday and what you think is going to happen in November. Just get your crystal ball out.
Well, I don't have any predictions on who's going to win, but what we've seen in the Republican primary is the Kasich wing and the Trump wing, Jim Jordan wing, perhaps, battling each other in a mini version of what we've seen in the governor's race, a really nasty, divisive primary, a very expensive primary as well. So we've even seen the former Congressman Tiberi say that one of the frontrunners is too conservative for that district. So I think we're going to be watching what happens on Tuesday, and although this district was gerrymandered to elect a Republican, what we've seen in special election after special election is Democrats outperforming, and I think that's why people nationally are looking at this as a toss-up race.
And what do you think what's going to happen in that district?
I think she's
part of
a
Franklin County.
good talking point communicator on the Democratic hit the Republican, hit the right. Gerrymandering. I mean, interesting. Our candidate for Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, is really the father of reform. This governor been talking about it for years, so we can talk about the past, we can talk about the accomplishments of the Republican majorities in the future and on election reform, gerrymandering reform, so we're proud of that. We got 11 candidates on the Republican side, I think 6 or 7 on the Democratic side, so it's very hard to say, you know, somebody could end up getting 29% of the vote and coming out on top. We endorse Kevin Bacon. We're proud of him. Troy Balderson's another leading candidate and a fine member of the legislature. So we're going to have a strong candidate, and I predict we will cause the Democrats to spend a lot of money in the fall, and we will still win the 12th congressional seat on the merits.
On behalf of the